much. Thank you. All right. Our next, how's everyone feeling? Feeling good? All right, we still have some more sessions. Let's keep the energy high here. Our next speaker is Colleen Stanley, and she's going to talk to us a lot about emotional intelligence. I think all of us as managers, as sales representatives, we want to make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with people that have both high EQ and high IQ. But sometimes when we're hiring, we don't always get that right? Someone might look good on paper, they might interview very well, but when they come and end up, in your workplace and start on the job, things might not go as planned. They might not be able to empathize with your customers, they might not be able to work well with others, and they just might not be able to get business over the line. So Colleen is here to talk about how we can really foster more emotional intelligence within our teams and how we can make every team stronger at empathizing with your customers. So with that, I want to welcome Colleen on the stage. Please help me. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I am so excited to be here because I'm with some of my favorite people, salespeople. Yeah! Now, in preparing for our conversation this afternoon, I started thinking way back to my first sales appointment. And I'm sure many of you can remember that first sales call. And I had the good fortune of starting with a small company that eventually became the largest in the world in their industry, Varsity Spirit Corporation. We sold cheerleading, dance, and camps to schools and universities. But at the time, we were the David in the David and Goliath story. So I'm a brand new rep, building a territory. I'm knocking on doors, foot canvassing, cold calling, and I finally land my first appointment with Otis Perry. Now, this is an important appointment for two reasons. Number one, it's my first, and number two, Otis controls the buying decision for 3 schools. And if I can just get a small piece of that business, I am now on my way to a professional selling career. So the night before, I studied my features, advantages, and benefits. I wrote out all the questions I was going to ask Mr. Perry, and I thought of every objection he could possibly think of. And I was ready. I showed up to North High School in Omaha, Nebraska, and I met Mr. Perry for the first time. The man is a giant. He is a redwood tree. And his voice is so much deeper in person. Colleen, thank you for coming to our school today. Please come into my office. And I sat down and I proceeded to blow that sales call. All that good pre-call planning went right out the window, and I started spraying, I started praying, and I sprayed all the product information I knew about my company, and I just prayed something would land on Mr. Perry. Now, Mr. Perry gave me an opportunity that day, and I am fairly certain it was a pity sales call. And I am fairly certain that when he went home and talked to Mrs. Perry that night, he said, honey, you know how we give to charity? Well, a new one showed up today. Her name was Colleen. She was skinny, broke, and hungry. Now, I survived my pity call. I went on to become vice president of sales for this company, got into this great profession of training, speaking, and development. And here's what I have noticed. Like a lot of VPs of sales and training firms, for many, many years, I focused only on teaching the hard selling skills, pre-call planning, value propositions, questions, still very important. However, I also found that we are still experiencing some of the same issues we did 25 years ago. Salespeople selling on price when they know they offer a better value. Salespeople writing proposals, practice proposals for prospects that are never going to buy. And then I would see the behavior that I exhibited in Mr. Perry's office 25 years ago. A well-prepared plan, rep, they could do the role play online with their coach, and in those more difficult selling situations, they would buckle. Emotion started running the meeting rather than effective selling and communication skills. So today, My goal is to talk to you, encourage you, and inspire you to start incorporating the soft skills, the emotional intelligence skills, into your sales and leadership processes. So let's get started. What is this thing called emotional intelligence? Lots of great definitions out there, but the simple definition is knowing what you're feeling, why you're feeling, and how that emotion affects how you show up. Because in life, there can be things called triggers that show up that cause a response that you later regret. It's called the trigger response regret cycle. It can be people, places, or situations. Now, since we're here to talk about sales today, let's talk about a hypothetical selling situation. You're meeting with 3 prospects for the first time. 2 love you. 1, not so much. Now, it is very easy to spot a prospect that doesn't love you. It first of all starts with the body language. Just try and sell me. The next thing is the verbal conversation, short, grunt answers, or, I don't know, you're the expert, why don't you tell me? And then the latest weapon of choice is that smartphone. And they whip it out, and as you're having that consultative sale, solution sale, challenger sale, they are texting and emailing. Now at that point, if you don't have high emotion management, high emotional intelligence and self-awareness, it is very easy to go into one of 2 responses. The first is a fight response. And a fight response is just what it sounds like. I'm going to get into your space a little bit, Mr. Prospect. And I am going to start spewing my expertise, because by the time this meeting's over, you are going to recognize how brilliant I am and how totally incompetent you are. Now, a flight response is a little different. We have a very sophisticated term at my company for it. It's called okie dokie. I'm out of here. I do not get paid enough for this. And a flight response is the root cause for discounting. Prospect finally looks up, starts engaging in the conversation, and says, well, you know, there's a lot of people out there trying to earn our business. Is this the best you can do? Now that's a trigger, which causes a response that often leads you to the discount dance. Well, I don't know, I think we could do 10%? Not working? 20%? And at that point, you are negotiating against yourself. Now, this is after you have attended the negotiation skills training course. And this is after you came back from the Tony Robbins course where you walked on coals shouting, I am worth it. What is happening? Emotions are running that meeting rather than effective selling and communication skills. It's the classic knowing and doing gap. Here's the good news. Emotional intelligence, emotional self-awareness, and emotion management can be improved, and is with a very disruptive technology. It's downtime. Because it's only in the downtime that you can get still. You can get quiet. Because in the downtime, you gain clarity of thought. Because a cluttered mind is not a creative mind. A cluttered mind is not a clear mind. And in the quiet and in the still, you can start tuning into your emotions. What triggered you? Were you intimidated? Were you frustrated? Did you get off your game? Were you embarrassed? Because if you're not tuned into your emotions, here's what I will promise you. You are bound to keep repeating the same mistakes. Trigger, response, regret loop. And in the quiet and in the still, as you're tuning into your emotions, know thyself, you will know others. Because the more tuned in you are here, the more tuned in you can be to others, and that is called empathy. And it is the ability to step into somebody else's shoes and see the world from their perspective, to know what they're thinking or feeling. And here's the question we must ask ourselves today. How can we possibly think we can influence another human being unless we know what they're thinking or feeling. Companies lose thousands, if not millions of dollars every year due to lack of empathy. Let's talk about one particular industry, the airlines. And I'm sure you've been at the airport, standing in line, ready to board, and you hear the announcement come across the speaker, the intercom, passengers of flight 238. Your flight to LA is now 5 hours late. We have no details. We'll probably share no details. Thank you. Now at that point, that attendant has just become a trigger, and the response that they create is a fight or flight response. You've got customers that are getting aggressive with the airline personnel trying to get rebooked, and you are on every social media site saying, do not fly this airlines again. And instead, just a smidgen, just a little bit of empathy would have done the trick. Passengers of Flight 238, I am so sorry to share this news, but your flight to LA, it's 5 hours late. And I know by sharing that news, I've just created a lot of stress for you because you're trying to get to business meetings, family events, vacations. Now, I can't control that storm going on the West Coast, but I can control keeping you updated. And I'm gonna do just that every 30 minutes. Thank you for your business. Whoosh. The conversation is about to change because that's what empathy does. When a customer can feel heard, they react in a better manner. I might be disappointed that it's 5 hours late, but I'm probably not going to get on that social media site. Because when you can make an emotional connection with another human being, the conversation elevates. And when the conversation elevates, the conversation changes, as does the relationship and the business outcome. Empathy is a major skill that can be used throughout the entire sales process. In my line of work, I have debriefed hundreds, if not thousands, of sales calls. And the salesperson comes to me, and this is good reps, high integrity reps, and they'll say, I cannot figure out why this deal is not moving forward. They've got pain, they've got money. I'm talking with the right decision makers. And I've shown them the ROI. It's a logically good decision. And at that point, we just move to empathy. And I asked the salesperson a couple of questions. You know, if you were sitting in your prospect's shoes, what would be the biggest worry about moving the business, making this change, making this investment? And at that point, the conversation changes. And the salesperson might reply, well, when I was talking to Bob, it did seem like he was working a lot, 60 hours a week. Wow, by bringing us on, that might turn into a 70-hour week. Gee, when I was talking to Beth, she loves what we're doing as a marketing agency, but we're fairly small. You know what? She's putting her neck on the line to bring us in. Now the conversation's about to change. Because folks, what we want to do is with empathy, we bring up the objections. And here is a note. If you are still overcoming objections, what I want you to do right now, get out a pen, write it on your hand, forehead, write it on your neighbor's forehead. Stop overcoming the objections. Because you are putting your prospects and customers into a fight or flight response. Instead, just demonstrate a little empathy. Bob, you know what, if I were you, we can look at all the logical reasons for us to switch business, use us as a vendor, install this process or service, but you're already working 60 hours a week. And the perception is probably this is going to take it to a 70-hour week. And no one wants to do that. Should we have that conversation? Beth, really appreciate how enthusiastic you are about our services. Let's face it, we're a smaller company than you're used to working with. So if I were you, I'd be worried about, can we deliver on the promise? Empathy changes the conversation because you start having real-world conversations instead of superficial conversations. And empathy is a key skill to use in leading, directing, and managing teams. Because I ask the same question: how can we possibly think we can influence another human being unless we can see the world from their shoes and know what they're thinking or feeling? Now, I have had the privilege of working for some great bosses and having some great mentors. And one of those great bosses was Klein Boyd. Now, after I got done running a few more pity calls, I actually became a pretty good sales producer at Varsity, and I asked for and got a promotion. And I moved to Memphis, Tennessee. And I remember, I'm sitting in my brand new office, and I've got a desk, and I've got a door, and I've got a window. And I'm looking at my business cards that read Regional Sales Manager, and I am so depressed because I have no clue as to what a regional sales manager does. Because the great part of working for a small company is they give you opportunities. But fast growth companies in startup phase often don't have the time or resources to give you coaching and mentoring. So I'm sitting at my desk. Did I tell you I had a window? Yeah. And the fear mongers start in. Who are you to think you could be a leader? You're just a small town kid from Iowa. Why didn't you stay as a salesperson? You were doing just fine. And the biggest fear was that my bosses, the very people that promoted me, would find out I was an imposter. And it did not take long. About 2 months into my new position, Klein walks into my office and sits down. Klein is a Southern gentleman. Klein is a kind gentleman. And Klein is one of the original investors in this company, so let's just say he's got some skin in the game to make sure that this company is highly successful. And the conversation begins. Colleen, I have been observing you, and you are putting up a very good front. However, I know you are struggling. So I came in here today just to remind you that my office is right down the hall. And anytime you want to stop in and visit, I'd welcome that conversation. And then he got up. Colleen, one more thing. You're gonna be just fine. Whew. The conversation changed because on that day, I was given the gift of empathy. And the biggest conversation that changed was the one I was having with myself, because if this savvy businessman thought I could make it, just maybe I could. And 2 years later, my region was #1 in the country, beating the Southwest by $10,000. I'm just saying. Yeah. So when you start getting these emotionally self-aware, emotion management, starting getting those in place, and empathy, you are on your way to building an emotionally intelligent sales culture. And these cultures win more business for a variety of reasons. Number one, they're competitive and they are collaborative. Now, these are two words that are often not used to describe salespeople and sales teams. You hear the word competitive, but not collaborative. Look no further than professional sports teams to understand the power of competitiveness and collaboration. And today I brought to you from Denver, Colorado, because that's my home, a picture of the most loyal fans on the planet, the Bronco fans. And just in case you don't remember, we did bring home Super Bowl 50. Yeah! Now, if you watch the post-game activities, Peyton Manning, our beloved quarterback, received the trophy. If you watched the game, you also know that Peyton Manning alone did not win the game. It was our defense, special teams, and coaches. Because what highly competitive athletes, really competitive athletes understand is that if we do not collaborate towards a common goal, we will not win the Super Bowl or bring home an NBA championship. Sales teams talk a lot about collaboration, a soft skill, which requires interpersonal skills. We have got posters on the wall that say teamwork. And often those words on the wall do not hit the hall, because I still see this behavior too often. Top sales producer walks into the monthly group sales meeting, and the manager starts asking, hey everyone, share your best practices. What's working? What's not working? And the top producer might share a average practice, but they're not going to share their best practice because it's fun being at the top of the hill. Here's a news alert. The competition's outside the building, not inside the building. Compete and collaborate. Or, I've seen this, especially in the age of technology. Top producers come into that group sales meeting, and they start checking their email because, after all, this meeting's for you guys. I'm hitting quota. If you have a I'm hitting quota rather than a we're hitting quota culture, you'll have good growth. You won't have great growth. You might have growth for a while. I'm going to doubt if you can sustain it, because the best sales organizations you're scaling, you must be competitive and collaborative. And I believe this to my core because I know as a young salesperson, I sought out mentors within the varsity corporation sales force. And I found two women. They were at the top of the hill, and they were competitive, and they were collaborative. Betty and Lynette. Now, Betty and Lynette lived in Georgia, and by any definition, they're what you call two tough old broads. Yeah. And I'd call them up whenever I needed product knowledge, information, opening up an account, and often I'd get Betty. Well, hi, darling. Good to hear from you. Yeah. Lynette, pick up the phone, Lynette. I got a girl on the line. She's got herself in trouble again. Now, what can I help you with, darling? And these two, top of the hill, competitive, collaborative reps would give me time, counsel, and advice. Now, they did not get recognition. Nobody knew I was bugging them. They did not get commission. But these women understood that maybe, just maybe, if we get every member of our team hitting quota, we will become a great organization. And that is one of the reasons Varsity is the largest in the world in their industry at this time, and they are now a major client for Salesforce. Because, folks, the soft skills, the emotional intelligence skills, do make a difference in achieving hard results. Thank you.
All right, thanks to Colleen. We now have another break, so I encourage you to visit our expo area, and we will come back here at 3:15. So it's a little bit of an extended break. Thank you very much.
Uptown funk you up. Uptown funk you up. Uptown funk you up.